Cash flow can make or break an investment deal. To calculate cash flow, we need income and expenses. For income, we can gather rental data, but for expenses, it can be a bit more difficult to calculate. In this video, I'm going to use apartment list data to find vacancy rates for a region. This will help with single deal analysis and finding markets with high demand. My name is Ariel Herrera, your fellow data scientist with the Tech and Real Estate channel, where we bridge the gap between real estate and technology. For this tutorial, we will be taking it step by step so that even if you are new to Python, it will not be overwhelming. My mission with this channel is to simplify success for you and ideally help you avoid a lot of the mistakes I made at the beginning of my 4-year investor journey. And so I want to help you build a data-driven business with automation in mind. And if that's exciting for you, be sure to like this video so that we can reach a wider audience, and be sure to subscribe to new videos every single week. All right, let's get started. Right now, I'm observing a single city on Coffee Closers, a product that I've co-developed with other founders, and we help investors find deals in minutes. Right now, we're looking at Phoenix, Arizona. Here we can see our quick view of neighborhood ratings from D all the way to A, and be able to actually identify up and coming areas as well. So what we do here is we add cash on cash return automatically, as well as some other metrics. Particularly for a single deal, you could run the numbers and see income, initial costs, and monthly expenses to ultimately see if this deal will work or not. Now, one of the most critical things as investors that we need to be accounting for is vacancy. So what is vacancy? So in this example, a tenant signs a 1-year lease. After that lease is up, they end up parting ways. And in that case, you need to get a new tenant in. You likely will have 1 month of vacancy where there's no one in the property. This is due to the time it would take to clean the property up as well as list it. And that is important for us to account for when running our numbers. What is the vacancy rate? And vacancy rate varies depending on cities. There are some cities with higher supply than demand, so a rental property could be listed for a longer period of time. The inverse is true for those that have more demand. So how do we actually get this vacancy rate? Well, using Coffee Closers, we have this vacancy rate already built in, but what if you wanted to gather data on your own for vacancy rate, as it could also help to determine which markets to invest in. So let's take a look at Apartments List. Right now, I'm on the homepage of Apartments List, particularly looking at a single city, which is Phoenix, Arizona. Here, prospective tenants can come in and they can look for rental properties in their given area. Now, what's really cool about Apartment List is that they provide free data sources for us to leverage. These data sources include information on rent, as we could see here, month-over-month changes, so we could observe growth, year-over-year changes, and vacancy index. Now, this is one of the few sources that I've been able to find that has vacancy data at a granular level for free. So the way we would work with this is going to download the report and clicking download. Let's see the data that comes back. So here I'm going to open this up in Excel, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. We could see that we have location information, location type. We see national, state, metro, county, and city. There's FIPS code associated, population of that given region. Then we have information by month, starting from 2017 in January, all the way down to the latest at this point in time, which is July of 2023. How do we observe this data in a more easier fashion so that we can actually visualize and see which markets have had increasing vacancy versus decreasing? We, of course, could use Excel and start to fumble around with this data set, but that would be inefficient. This is where we use Python. Right now, I have Google Colab open. Google Colab is a free notebook environment to be able to run Python on the cloud without having to have it at all locally installed on your machine. If you're new to Python, no worries, I'll take this step by step so you get a high-level overview of how you could work with vacancy data. You can make a copy by going to File and save a copy in Drive so you can directly work with the same notebook. You could run the cells as well as make any modifications. And if you want to get more in depth with Python, I do have a free course on YouTube that takes you from 0 all the way to hero. You'll be able to learn different Python concepts, all using real estate related examples. So let's go down and start running these cells so we could ultimately visualize vacancy across different regions. So I'm going to start by executing my first cell, which is imports. We are going to use the datetime object, pandas, in order to manipulate our data, files to download our data towards the end, and then plotly express to visualize our information on a month-by-month basis. We're also going to show all columns because, as we see from the Excel file, we have a lot of columns, I believe over 50. So we want to see all of them in one view within our notebook. Now we want to gather our data. So here we have our apartment list monthly vacancy rate. And as I explained previously, vacancy rate is the percentage of rental properties that are not occupied. So this can range between 0 to 1, or if we multiply that, from 1 to 100. Vacancy rates are important because they can indicate the health of a rental market, and they could be used to compare different markets to one another. I highly encourage you to check out the links directly from Apartment List to get more of an explanation on their methodology. For our use case, I've already downloaded Apartment List vacancy data into GitHub. So if we go over to our GitHub page, GitHub is where you can have a repository of code, and I have all or most of my code stored here that you can actually access for free. So from what we observe, we have apartment list vacancy, which is a CSV file that we're going to be able to directly access. If you want to check out more of the coding examples that I have, feel free to check out projects, and you'll see information on calculators, forecasting, machine learning, property estimates, short-term rentals, web scraping, and so much more. But getting back into it, we are going to read in the data source for vacancy that comes from apartment lists from GitHub. We are reading this into a pandas data frame. So we also label time up top to see how long this takes, which takes 185 milliseconds, which is very fast. We have 454 records, that means number of rows, and then we have 85 columns. Like I mentioned, there's a lot of columns, but we'll be able to work with that in a little bit. So our next step after loading in data whenever you're working on an analytics project is to do some exploratory data analysis, understand the data set a little bit more, including its characteristics and any limitations it may have. So here I could see that we have location type, we have United States as a whole, and then we have location by name. So if I wanted to understand more about locations, I could select the location type column from our data frame and look at all unique values. So if I run this cell, we could see that we have data as high as national, all the way as granular to city. We can use Describe to learn more about our data set. So at a quick glance by using Describe, if I look at vacancy from 2017 January, we could see that the minimum vacancy was 0% and the max vacancy was 20%, which is pretty high, with the median being about 6%. And if we look at the median for more recent periods, looking at 2022 of June, we could see that median dipped a little bit below 5%, which means high demand, little supply. So even though I'm originally a Northeaster, I now reside in the great state of Florida. So I want to use Florida as my example state, and feel free to interchange this with your own. So here I'm going to select one single state to my variable state, which is Florida. Next, I want to filter down on my state of interest. We can observe here in our data set that when it's a metro, county, or city, that typically state and county are filled out. So if for my interested state, I can filter on this column state, which is what I'm doing right here. And then I particularly just want to look at counties. So I'm going to filter on location type being county. I can run this cell, and now we've reduced our data set from about over 400 records down to 13. And for columns, we still have the same amount of columns. I could see here I have locations like Miami-Dade County, Broward County, which is also part of the Miami-Fort Lauderdale area, as well as ones that I'm more familiar with, which is Hillsborough County in Tampa, Florida. Right now, I can't really do much with this data set because the months are all different columns. When I plot my data, I want months to be one column and then have all of them going downwards. So what I would need to do is use MELT. MELT is a method for pandas that allows you to transform your data frame. So there's two parts that I want to account for here. One is being able to get the county name. So if I do iLock, I can grab all rows and then only grab that first column. Then the next thing that I want to do is grab the list of all of the columns that have months dynamically. So everything that's after the 7th column is what I want to grab. And as you can see, these are all of our columns that have vacancy data by month. So I am now kind of splitting apart my data frame and then joining it back together using concat. And now we could see we have a data frame that has location name and all of those following months. Now I want to melt this so that we can have just two different columns. So I'm going to run this first so you could see what this looks like. And actually we have three. We have location name, the variable, which in this case is going to be our date object, and then the value, which is our vacancy object. The way I did this was passing in this data frame up top, so our concatenated one, then specifying my ID should be location name, and my values should be all columns that are after my first column. That way it's dynamic in case there are more columns added down the line for this file. Now we have this beautiful table. It's a lot easier to interpret as a human, but also when we go through Plotly Express to visualize this data. So next I'm going to add features. There are two things that I want to do. Is one, this date object is a string and it's not interpretable. We want it to be a date. We have right now year underscore month. So here I'm going to transform this into a datetime object. I'm passing in year underscore month so that it could recognize the format and be able to put this into a date object. The second step that I want to do is not just see vacancy as is for a particular month, but how has that vacancy rate changed relative to the prior month. So here I have value, which is vacancy, and then percentage change. One thing I need to add is make sure that I'm looking at the right county for 12 months back. So we're going to do here is sort. So I'm going to sort by, which will be by location name, and we want to sort by time period. Then we can run the cell, and we could see here that we have at our tail end single county, the latest time period, vacancy value, and year over year change. We can fact check this a bit by looking at the whole data frame. And let's try to look at just one single county. So I'm going to put a county that I'm familiar with. So I'm going to select location name, string that contains hills, because I know Hillsborough County. I could see there we have 79 rows. And if I want to make sure the year over year percentage is correct, what I can do is observe just 2 months. So let's filter not only on the county, but let's also filter on the particular months of interest to validate my data. So time period should be is in a list, which in this case would be this July period, as well as the previous period, which we can add in here and put 2022. So I think I have to add, let's see, oh, there we go. Great. So now we could see that our value for vacancy, 0.048 in July 2022, it is now 0.0768 My formula here says that the percentage change has increased by 0.57%, and let's validate that calculation quickly. By inputting my values that I had for my data frame, I put what the first period was, so July of 2022 for vacancy rate, and then what it changed to the following year, which was a 57.55% increase, and that matches our value here. So we have validated that our features that we added are correct, and now we can visualize it. So there's two visualizations that I want to walk through. First is looking at vacancy by county. We are inputting our data frame, DF features. Our x-axis, so going across, is going to be our time period column, which we have here. Our value is our vacancy. Our location name is how we're going to split. See that we have different lines. So our location name are our counties. Then we can observe here. So overall, if I'm just taking a look, we could see from 2017 to mid-2023 that vacancy rates were kind of all over the place in the beginning across counties, but then they started to become really similar around mid-2020. As a whole, we see vacancy rates kind of climb up, but then have a dramatic downturn for a period of time, and then start to rebound late 2021 into mid-2023. This differs a bit per county, but there's generally a theme across Florida here. And this goes with the migration trends of those coming to the Sunbelt states and thus having more demand in this area. We can now see year-over-year changes. And if we want to observe just 2023, for example, we could use Plotly to zoom in a bit more, and we could see those with lower vacancy rates and having vacancy rate dip is actually none of them. They've all increased. We could see 0, that right here from February, there were 2 counties that actually had a decrease in vacancy, but for the most part, they all increased in vacancy. But if we look at the highest, which is for Seminole County, it's still, it's a change, so it seems like a large increase. But if we look at it with this chart here, we could see that it's still under 8%, which is relatively low. Pretty much anything under 10% is very healthy. So what this would tell me is that I am confident in investing within one of these markets at this stage of looking at just vacancy, because I don't see anything particularly alarming of vacancy really shooting up in comparison to the other counties. I may want to check against some other states as well to see, are there particular states that have lower vacancy than the counties in this one? What you can do next is export this to a CSV file if you'd like to have this data in your hands. And now going back to our example for Phoenix, Arizona, we have our vacancy rate that's been auto-calculated, but this deal still doesn't work. How do we make the deal work? Our monthly profit is still a negative number. Well, let's go back to our income. The price is a little under $300,000, been on market for only 2 days, so there still may be some competition here. But what if I live in the property for a period of time and then rent it out a year later? This could help to rent it out later where there's increasing rents, and also allow me to maybe house hack the property too. So let's imagine I'm going to house hack this property. I'm going to rent out the extra bedrooms for $800 each. That's going to put me at $2,400, which now brings monthly profit to be positive. And if I want to get even more squeeze here, I can try going a little bit below asking. Let's say going to 9% below asking, and I see a monthly profit now of $288. I can also go back to my monthly costs and maybe reduce vacancy a little bit since I'll be living in the property. Let's put that at 120, for example, and then put here for management fee 0 since I'll be living in the property. And now we could see how our monthly profit has adjusted, and this has now become a deal. I hope observing vacancy rates were just as exciting for you as it was for me, but if you have any follow-up questions, please feel free to reach out in the Tech and Real Estate Facebook group, where it's not only myself, but other experts and peers to help out as well. And if you haven't already, please like and subscribe. Thanks.